Hi, good afternoon everybody. Welcome back to my channel, Fishing AT. Hopefully you can hear me over the wind. I suppose I've been the victim of very poor planning today. I've thought I'd come down to Lilstock on the North Somerset coast, just west of Bridgewater, and fish with the remaining bait I had for my last Friday's trip at Bossington. It's Tuesday the 21st of March. But I completely misread the Veals mail order venue guide, and also I misinterpreted the Google Maps when I was trying to look for a feature called the pipe here at Lilstock, and I've confused it with a bit of like an old jetty or causeway. That's I'll show you in a minute. And I met a guy in the car park and I was unloading my my tackle, and he said, "Oh, you don't want to be fishing today, mate. It's a rubbish tide, too big a tide, and you won't be able to fish." Funny enough, he was a guy I had already met at Stolford a few months back, and he gave me some advice with his mate on how to fish down there. He said, "Oh, I recognise you. You're on the camera, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes," because I got quite excited. And he said, "Yeah, you're the chap that doesn't catch very much, aren't you?" So that immediately put me back in my box and made me have a quiet giggle to myself, because I don't, do I? I catch the odd fish, but never a lot. Anyway, a wise old sage, he gave me some advice. So I sort of, when I arrived at about 10, it was at least 3 hours before low tide, and he said, well, the tide will go out and a load of sand will be exposed, and you really want to be fishing this on a neap tide. And he's probably right. But I've stayed on in my van, I've cooked myself some lunch, and I've just walked down, and I'm gonna fish maybe 2 or 3 hours on the incoming tide here at Lilstock. So just for the we've got over here, we've got Hinkley Point. See Hinkley there, massive construction site, big jetty. You've got Shirton reefs and beaches there, this side of the jetty. And then I'm sort of fishing, I don't know, quarter of a mile from the pipe. So the pipe, you can't see it there. Maybe I'll see if I can put an arrow and show it. Just as you walk out of the car park up the coast path, you see a pipe. It's a drainage pipe, basically, that just drains water from the fields behind into the pebbles. Here's the causeway that I thought was the pipe. Is about 200 yards to my left. But I'm just going to fish in this little gully here, little gully that runs up to the stones. And whereas at the pipe the stones are probably about 200 yards, I've probably got about 60 yards of rock in front of me at high water. So we're going to see how we go. So baits today, I've got the remnants of some ragworm from last Friday's trip to Bossington. I've got bluey, squid and mackerel, little small joey mackerel. And rigs, I'll show you the rigs, but they're going to be long 4 to 5 foot pulley pennels, 2030 hooks, and relatively biggish baits. See if we can pick up a ray or something like that. That's what I'd like to try and catch today. Fingers crossed. This low water is 1 o'clock. And high tide is about 7 o'clock tonight, and it's about a 12.2 metre tide, 0.3 metre low on the Hinkley scale. So that's about 12 metre rise, so it's a big tide's building. Obviously last Friday when I was at Bossington, that was a very small tide, about 4 metres to 8 metres, so 4 metre rise. So tides are building really quite considerably over the last 3 or 4 days. So come in pretty quick. But we'll give it a go. I'm going to be fishing a rotten bottom on my pulley pennel like I did at Bossington, because there's quite a few boulders and reef type features all around, weed and rock. The sand here is relatively shallow because it's onto flat rock as well underneath, so there's not a lot of sand for the grips to grip into, but we'll see how we go. Rig wise, fishing a 6 ounce or about 180 gram grip lead. I've got a Gemini like pin and clip rotten bottom that I was using at Boston last week. I've got a breakaway imp, and then I've got my pennel set up with a squid and bluey wrap. So there's my hand, not a particularly big bait, about 4 to 5 inches long. And then I've got quite a long pulley. That's my pulley bead there, and my swivel into my snood. And basically it's 85-pound fluorocarbon leader, rig body, and 85-pound snood. So I'm going to be fishing rigs like that. And then the other rig I'm going to use some ragworm and squid. Weather conditions, we're going to probably have some showers. Got some big shower bearing cloud coming there. Got quite a strong southwesterly wind, so feeling it here out in the open a little bit. It's about 15 to 20 mile an hour. When I've walked in closer to the call it the cliff, but there you tend to get in the lee of it, and so we're out of the wind a little bit there. So yeah, the back of where I'm fishing obviously is the very short pebble bank, and then you've got a sort of an exposed cliff section, basically that runs all the way down towards Hinkley. The high tide line is just shy of the top of the bank, so I won't be fishing probably until high tide, up to high tide, because obviously I just need to move nearer the exit so I can actually get out and I don't get cut off. So the high tide line is about 3 or 4 feet below the top of the pebble bank, and the tide this morning was bigger than the one this afternoon, so shouldn't be any higher than that. So fingers crossed we don't get any rain. It's going to be quite windy. The tide is racing in. It's about 40 minutes after low water, so whereas before it was probably a good 200 to 300 yards in front of me, it's now about 150. It's about halved, so hopefully about 30 minutes or so I can get the first bait in the water. So that will be just after an hour after low. Well, it's an hour and a half after low water, and the first casts are in the water. Left hand rod, grey rod, has got a 4-0 actually pulley pennel with bluey and squid, and the right hand rod, the red rod, has got a 2-0 pulley pennel with ragworm and squid. Tide's advancing in pretty quickly, and won't be long before I need to move back up the beach. A bit of a small surf rolling in here as the tide pushes in. You can see the sort of features that I'm fishing across. We're trying to fish between. There are my rods there. Got a lot of rocks. Stood on a rock bed here, interdispersed with little sand gullies. The further you go over, it looks like towards the Hinkley point there and towards Shirton, you've got bigger stretches of sand. And then as you move round towards what they call the pipe there at the entrance to Lilstock, the water is already up to the base of the pebbles bank there, and obviously we'll push in up over the pipe later on this afternoon and evening. So the plan is to high tide is about 7 o'clock, so the plan is certainly to fish up until about 6 maybe, when it starts getting dark. We'll see how we go.
just nice to be somewhere, fishing somewhere new, learning about a new venue. I'm taking on board words of wisdom from the gentleman I met this morning. We'll see. One other angler came past me when I was in the van in the car park earlier on. He went left as he's looking out to sea, and on that side, according to the venue guide, you've got a lot of flat rock and reef areas, and that's recommended to be fished at low water, but obviously not somewhere that I've fished. Well, I'm up on the pebbles now. It's 20 past 4. About 3 hours after high tide. So 3 hours to go to come in. No bites so far. Lost just the one lead on the rotten bottom. But now I'm just casting. I've got a big sand, sort of expanse of sand in front of me, about 50 yards out, so I'm not going to be checking it far. Gentle rob onto the sand. There should be a reasonable depth there, so we'll see how we go. Being tucked in here under the escarpment here, you can see there's my escape route out that way, back towards the car park. There's someone fishing what I now know as the pipe mark there in the orange top. And he's probably got about 75 to 90, 100 yards of rocks in front of him. So he must have a fair cast to get it onto clean ground. Yeah, so it's great. Out the wind. No rain as yet, touch wood. And the chap this morning was right. I don't catch a lot, so fingers crossed that we might just get just the one fish. Well, it's 6 o'clock in the evening. It's about 45 minutes to high tide. Although I'm close to getting washed off my mark here. I'm up in the trees, almost. Still no bites. A couple of the worm baits come back stripped. But that might be crabs, possibly. I didn't see any bites or anything. But it's going to stick it out for till past high tide, and another hour and a quarter, and we'll see how we go. It's 7:15, almost high tide, pretty much at the top of the bank. And see the basically escarpment there, and top of the pebble bank there. Got South Wales in the distance. One of the Flatholm or Steepholm Islands, I think that's Flatholm. Oh, sorry, Steepholm there. And then we've got the glow of Hinkley Point's construction site there in the distance. Fishing, very quiet. No bites. A couple of the worm baits came back a little bit stripped, but that might be crabs. Fish baits, or the fish combo baits, pretty much untouched, and coming back the same after 30 to 40 minutes out. It hasn't been a complete write-off as a trip. Got to learn about the mark, really. Certainly on a 12-metre tide here, it's a bit like Stolford, really. I think you can fish this particular mark here where I am. Probably 3 hours up, 3 hours down, easy on a big tide. And then obviously there's still someone fishing over at the pipe there, so he must have an exceptional cast to get out onto the sand from where he is. So yeah, if you've got a big cast, then again, shouldn't be a problem here for you. Well, unless I catch anything, I want to thank you for watching. Tough going, I know. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And hopefully, well, I'll certainly come back to Lilstock again. And we'll see you all again soon. And if you're fishing, tight lines, and take care. Cheers everyone. Good night and bye.